Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 43. Welcome to One Day Today. We're off to another week of some beautiful souls sharing their stories, their insights, their wisdom, their unique gifts, their unique genius. I'm really excited about our guest today. We have an incredible poet. I'm really excited to introduce him. He'll be on with us in just a moment. And I was just kind of thinking today, about the role of art, the role of music, of poetry, of spoken word, and in humanity and in society. There's so many things that are happening in the world, and it always amazes me the power art has to knock us out of our small lens, the city face that I whenever I'm in New York City. It's like we kind of have these, like we live our life without even seeing ourselves, and I'll just include myself in that. But art has this miraculous ability to just knock us out of that and to just have this experience within us that just opens up the world and opens up ourselves really to something bigger than we even knew was there, could be there, that's even possible. And it's amazing, it's just the how much the imagination and the experience of beauty and wonder and joy and mystery, how much it just inspires us, just something deep within us. And I'm really excited about Stephen Wing, who's going to be sharing with us in just a moment. First, let me check in and say hello to Matthew, our co-host. Matthew, how are you doing today, brother?
Doing good, brother, man. Been enjoying the conversation backstage and really excited to hear Steven's performance. I feel like that's kind of part of what it's going to be, like the way he was talking about it. So I'm curious to see how it actually turns out. But poetry, like for me, it's always better. Like it always translates better and hits more when it's read live. Like I don't
Right.
know what it is about it, but there's just something about when whoever, like the writer, is there and pouring their heart and soul and emotion into the room or into the space, however it's set up. Um, I never could read poetry, but I can listen to it a lot.
Right. Yeah. No, experiencing a poet speaking their own material, it's very meditative and it just words. I mean, words really, reality and our experience of reality arises in language, and poets are have a superpower to really paint imagination and experience. I mean, I'm just so humbled and honored to have Stephen. I'm just gonna bring him in now because I just want to hear his poetry and hear him share. Hi, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Abram. Thank you, Matthew. It's a pleasure to be
Absolutely.
here in cyberspace with y'all.
It is, isn't it? Welcome to the stage.
It is such an honor to have you, Stephen. I'm really looking forward to your share and you sharing your gifts with us. And I'm just gonna hop to it if you're all right with it. Are you ready, Stephen?
I'm ready. Yeah,
All right, Stephen.
almost ready to share poetry. I feel like I should wear a warning sign around my neck. Poet is approaching.
Warning: poetry, impending poetry. Yep,
Right.
I love it. Well, that being said, Stephen, the stage is yours.
Thank you. The topic of your program has a lot to do with community, and reflecting back on my life, I've always been a loner and a hermit when I could get away with it. But that has crashed me into community every step of my journey, whether I like it or not. I've kept breaking through barriers that separate me from the various levels of community that I've encountered, and I finally am resigned to that and have written a lot of poetry about it. And I wanted to just go back through the stages of my life, since you're offering me the opportunity. I would say my first breakthrough in consciousness was my first trip to the wilderness when I was 14 on a summer camp wilderness canoe trip in the Boundary Waters up in Minnesota and Canada. And it was a breakthrough for me because I've been raised with church and Sunday school, and none of it really seemed to make sense to me. And when I finally experienced the wilderness, I realized that none of that mattered. It was the direct experience of the creation, however it got there, was not important. But I was like a duckling imprinting on the first thing that appeared to be my mother, and that was the Mother Earth in her pristine original form. So I want to read a poem that is one of the oldest poems that I still share with people about an experience on one of those canoe trips. It's called Wing Beat. I woke to see the muscle in a loon's wing as it rose and flexed in front of my canoe. No creature of mere feather, black and gray striped ghost afloat in its reflection. Suddenly it stood up on the water, spread its wet white underfeathers to the sun, took 3 steps back, and I could see the solid brawn beneath a wing beat. I broke my stride in mid-stroke and sat still, breathless as the floating loon before me, while my heart still swam a beat behind in its slow settling reflection. Well, I went back every summer, every chance I could, for all the way through high school and college, and that became my spiritual core as I began to branch out and explore myself and the world. And the next big breakthrough I experienced was in college. I discovered hitchhiking, and hitchhiking became like a spiritual school for me, because when you hitchhike, you let go all control and you just open yourself up to whatever the universe brings. And if you have a destination, that's great, but it doesn't mean that's where you'll end up. But it does mean that you'll experience whatever the universe throws at you. And for me, it was always something that taught me something, and always in a gentle way. I never had a bad experience hitchhiking. I had a couple of scares, but nothing really malicious was going on. It was just me getting comfortable with the universe and all of its variety. So I want to read another poem about that. It's called Vagabond's Debt. And it's about someone who's shy and not so outgoing, being drawn into the human community through just trying to get somewhere on the map and discovering along the way more things about myself than I had known before. It's called Vagabond's Debt. Time after time, the world sends me miracles, dressed up as one more random mortal stranger. To whom did I tender my thanks? I owe 100,000 miraculous miles to an endless chain of fleeting friendships. Who shall I repay? Every heartbeat, every breath, I inherit from the unbroken lineage of lovers who walked here before me. Where have they all vanished in such a hurry? How can I even begin to calculate my gratitude? What can I do with all these mortal debts that hover around me like a cloud of metaphysical gnats? And time after time, the world unmistakably replies, take good care of all my random mortal strangers. Well, I have a lot of poems about hitchhiking. In fact, once I got married and stopped hitchhiking, I collected them all in a book and published them, and had a lot of fun with that, giving them away, basically. Of course, they're all gone now. But on one of my hitchhiking trips, I discovered the Rainbow Gathering, which is, I went to the 10th gathering, started in 1972, and I discovered it in 1981. And my sister was going to school on the West Coast. She sent me this invitation, and I hitchhiked from Georgia to Washington State, and had the most amazing, mind-blowing experience there of 12,000 people camped in the National Forest, creating an autonomous village, run by consensus, operating by volunteer energy and donations, and just doing an incredible experiment in self-governance. with 12,000 people in an absolutely peaceful scenario, all centered around an amazingly powerful prayer for peace on July 4th. They still do this every year. I think this past year, they actually skipped it this year for the first time, but the year before that was in Wisconsin. It was the 47th annual Rainbow Gathering. So here's a poem I wrote at the Minnesota Gathering in 1990 called The Drums of Katua. Katua was a regional family that did a kitchen at the gathering every year. The Rainbow Gathering has 20, 30, 40 different kitchens put together by different groups of folks, and you can just make the rounds from kitchen to kitchen, eat all day if that's what you like to do. But you really have more fun if you stop at one of the kitchens and start helping. That's where the true joy of the gathering is. But this is the Drums of Katua. Coming up the main trail, I can tell I'm getting close. The drums. Have I missed dinner? Climbing the mud path through the trees, I can hear among the hollow harmony of drum skins, a clatter of forks and spoons on plates and cups. Just in time, I join the serving line. The drummers are gathered in the kitchen, where the servers ladle soup and smile. My dish is a deli container. My spoon is a ground score. I dig them from my day pack and join the drumming. Ho, drummers of Katua Kitchen, don't you hear the thunder? Are your tarps tight? Are your dry clothes sealed in plastic? Careful with that rhythm stolen from the rain. Someone fills a pot to keep from soup warm for the drummers. They thunder on till everyone is fed and all the plates and cups and forks and spoons are clean. The leftovers will keep a while. The drums of Katua thunder on. Well, I kept traveling. The Rainbow Gathering was one of my main destinations every year. But eventually, I met a lady who persuaded me to settle down here in Atlanta. And her name's Dawn. And we met at a Rainbow Gathering, a regional Rainbow Gathering. And the following year at that gathering, we had our wedding. We had our first wedding. Our second was a year later after that in my parents' church. Anyway, this is the poem I read to her at our wedding, at both of our weddings. It's called Wedding Vow. Of course, you'd know that when I found her, she'd be beautiful, worth growing up the rest of the way. You wouldn't know her secret scars and invisible tattoos, like you know mine, friends, but you can trust me to recognize them. How else would I have known her? Now that I have made her cry and made her yell at me, she seems to have decided. I'm the one born under her constellation of signs, returning to spawn, swimming in with the tide as her river arrives and arrives. She's made me suffer the subtle needle of her distress. I wear the print of her teeth in my ear. I too have made up my mind. She's the one standing by the highway at first light, with my unknown destination crayoned on her sign. Well, once I settled down in Atlanta, I realized that, of course, Dawn had the idea that I might go out and get a job, but for once I was settled in one place and I could actually become part of an ongoing community. The Rainbow Gathering is a community that comes together once a year from all over the country. And the people I see there, I don't ever see otherwise. So it's a real pleasure to be part of that community. But only when I stopped traveling and settled down could I really experience real community of an ongoing nature. Gary Snyder once said that a network is a dispersed group of people who have a lot in common, but a community is a people who live close together and are wildly diverse. So it's definitely an educational experience to live in one place. And once I finally got around to it after 12 years of traveling. So this is actually a poem I wrote on the road when I wrote it on the very first Martin Luther King holiday. I happened to be in Vincennes, Indiana. And it's for Martin Luther King. It's called "And the Wind Fell Bleeding." How long has it been since I cried 3 times in a night? Once at the newsreel of the 3 cops in riot helmets wrestling the portly gray-haired lady down. Again at the words swelling in the golden throat of the dreamer who saw the promised land and knew we could not conquer it by killing this time. And again when I heard how that windpipe shattered and the wind fell bleeding. And I kept thinking, what if all over America, in black factory towns and cities full of white marble, people are walking out of chapels and Capitol rotundas tonight, feeling what I feel. And of course, I chose that because the old-fashioned newsreels have given away to cell phone videos, and we've all been seeing way too much of that kind of abuse of Black citizens at the hands of whites. And once again, the right of Black people to live out their lives has become a prominent focus for the community of peace-loving, justice-loving people around the country. But my own personal major focus as an activist is the nuclear arms race, which is once again accelerating. We are closer to nuclear war than we have been ever since the beginning of the arms race, and that is something that people track, and they're basing that on all the factors that most people are unaware of. A long time ago, it was a major focus of a lot of activism, but this year is the 75th year since the Hiroshima bombings, and as it fades into the past, people become less and less aware of how close we are. The weapon systems are on hair trigger alert. The United States has basically dropped out of all of the arms treaties, and international tension is really a bigger danger than most people are aware of. So this is a poem I wrote recently. Here in Georgia, we have the East Coast Trident submarine fleet is based in St. Mary's, Georgia, down on the Florida line, and we host some of the most evil weapons ever conceived here in Georgia. So we go down there occasionally. I'm a member of Nuclear Watch South, and we leaflet at the base, and we do other things nationally. We're part of a international coalition of peacemakers. But here in Georgia, we go down there and we leaflet the workers as they leave the base, and we hold up our signs and try to get our message to the local people passing by there. And their economy is so dependent on this base. But right now, 122 nations have signed a treaty, agreed to a treaty, and it's being ratified. And if 7 more nations ratify the treaty, it becomes international law. And then it will actually be illegal to possess these weapons, as it is already to possess landmines, chemical weapons, biological weapons. All these international treaties have the force of international law. So the United States will become an international outlaw when 7 more nations ratify that treaty. Anyway, this is a poem called Blast Radius, and that is the radius of destruction around a nuclear bomb blast. But I'm stealing that concept here for this poem about leafleting at the Kings Bay Trident submarine base. Standing here on the curb outside the submarine base, with my stack of leaflets and my sign, I feel like a hitchhiker again, calm and relaxed, posing like a model in an ad for casual friendliness and peaceable intent, swiveling at the hip as the wheels roll by to keep my sign angled straight toward the passing possibility of a glance. The choice today is between nonviolence and non-existence. MLK abridged. Aiming my gaze like a peace-seeking missile at the spot behind each tinted windshield, where I calculate the driver's eyes, watch the red light, and wait for the green. Smiling just enough to imply I'm having more fun out here than you are in there. Absolutely no place I'd rather be. not even especially impatient for someone to roll down the glass barrier that divides us, to accept a leaflet and trade pleasantries. How are you doing? All right. Have a great day now. Never once letting on how deep and forceful the blast of joy is that erupts from inside each time it happens. Eureka! Hallelujah! Praise the Lord, I got a ride. All right, well, my last breakthrough was my realization that the poetry I've written a whole lot of it, and so much of it I realized was about my relationship with the natural world and my visits to the woods, canoeing, going to rainbow gatherings, camping, spending time out in nature. Like I started out saying, became my spiritual core early on, and the beginning of my spiritual journey. And my orbit always leads me back there wherever I travel. So, my mother, I share that with her, that she introduced my dad to camping, and they took us camping when we were kids. And she had an ongoing arrangement with a cousin of hers to hike the Appalachian Trail, and each summer they picked up where they left off. And but then one year her cousin dropped out, and she had no one to hike with. And I tried to think of a way to hook her up with someone her age. She was in her late 70s. And but then it dawned on me that I could hike with my mom myself. So one of my best memories is hiking with my mom for 10 miles over the crest of Blood Mountain on the Appalachian Trail. And this is a poem I wrote for her. She's passed on now, but I'll always have that memory and this poem. It's called View from a Mountain Ridge. And this is the last one. After this, I guess we will indulge in some conversation. View from a mountain ridge. Mom, I ask, on the way to the car, do you remember hiking with me on the Appalachian Trail? Single file, step by step along the ridgeline of Blood Mountain. 3 days to walk 10 miles. Mom leading the way with a hiking stick in each hand. One long, leisurely conversation, long overdue. The trail winding between prehistoric outcrops of granite, climbing and descending through a luminous wilderness. Wild forest falling away on either side, on steep, leaf-shadowed slopes in green-tinted sunlight. Cooking breakfast and dinner in doll-sized aluminum pans over her tiny propane stove. Camping one night in a shelter of rough-hewn stone and weathered beams. The next in her cramped pup tent in a dry wash below the trail, among rocks and roots and fallen leaves, the most level place we could find. That was 7 years ago, when Mom was 79. And everything's changed now, except once again I matched my steps to hers. As we crossed the parking lot, hand in hand, headed for the car, to visit Dad in the hospital after his bypass. And she looks at me in one of her flashes of lucidity, without blinking, as if through a momentary gap in drifting early morning mist, without even a heartbeat's hesitation, her voice clear and firm, declaring, the highlight of my life. Well, Mom was kind of forgetful by then. I'm sure she was forgetting a lot of other highlights that might have outshone that one. But for me, it definitely was one of the highlights of my life. So I'll always be grateful for that. And I kind of didn't speak about my family, but I've had a wonderful, supportive family. My mom and dad would actually drive me to the highway when I took off on a hitchhiking trip and drop me off there at my ramp. So it's kind of fitting to close with that poem for my mom. I got a million of them. Don't let me go on.
I could let you keep going on. Thank you. That was amazing, Stephen. You have such. obviously you have such a way with words, but just you invoke this beautiful spirit in your words, and I really just acknowledge you and I honor you just because it's. I just one thing that stood out. I mean, so many things stood out to me, but you're talking about. I mean, for me, I'm very passionate about peace, and when you're talking about, you know, the blast radius, you're talking about weapons in this world, and that we've never been closer to, you know, our own demise of our own creation, and it kind of made me think like what you're doing is kind of the opposite of that. And for some reason, what came to my mind is weapons of mass creation. You know, it's like what you create is, you know, it's not quite a battle as much as it is a space and a context in which we as humans recognize and view and experience our reality. And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. Like, where do you see, especially in this new experience of this world, in this ever connected world with, you know, with that's never been more globalized and connected, but at the same time, amid pandemic and all the transitions and all the things that are happening in the world, where do you see us as humans and the role of art, and how because for me, I see it as kind of a call to arms for artists right now.
Well, somebody wrote a book called Weapons of Mass Distraction. And to me, writers have a particular responsibility. I mean, all artists have a choice. They can either distract people from the urgent necessities of our time, or they can point people to them and point out the creative solutions that are everywhere happening all around us. And they're being ignored for the most part by the mainstream media. And if you think about it, writers, almost everything on the internet is written by somebody. Everything on the radio, everything in the print media, everything on television, movies, music, everything has a writer lurking behind it. You know, visual art is an exception to that. Nobody writes a script for that, but virtually everything else, and music, of course, unless it has lyrics, but the writers have such an impact. And if the writers of the world would, if they spend their time and energy making money, expressing themselves, entertaining people, well, they really are doing us a disservice. I mean, it's fine in ordinary times, but these are not ordinary times when we're that close to nuclear Armageddon, when climate change is looming over us, when people are dying from COVID, when our democracy is in mortal danger. There's so much that writers can do to point people in that direction. I mean, you can do it without turning people off. You can do that without numbing, without people turning you off. That's what creativity is all about, is finding a way to get through to people. But I just don't see enough of that. And of course, I don't pay a lot of attention to the media as a whole. I know there is a lot of really good stuff out there. But that's something I would urge anyone out there that's a writer or a creative at all, is to start pointing to people to what matters rather than away from it. Glad I got a chance to say that to someone.
That's beautiful. I think that's very powerful. You have a lot of fans writing in the comments. Well, for one, looks like I'll put some of them up here. You said, looks like Lorraine said she loves them all, Wing, and thank you for sharing. And the last one brought her to tears. You have a lot of fans who are moved by your words, and understandably. I think it's very well said what you're just speaking, and how the role of what we all have as artists and creators. And it's what I see is like it's in the network of conversations. You know, if we say everything's going to hell, then it's going to hell. And if we believe that, and when we focus, and that's where art kind of breaks the cycle, because we can kind of repeat a pattern until we actually recognize that we're in a pattern. And I feel like art knocks us out of our usual focus, our usual paradigm. So right. I think it's so powerful. Just, I mean, you actualize that with your words, and it's inspiring and it's moving.
Yeah, that's what artists do. They create something that never has existed before, and you can copy the artists of the previous generations, or you can just generate something totally new, and that is such a exciting possibility that to present to the world. don't run in the rut of your predecessors.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do have a
Absolutely.
complaint about a lot of poets. A lot of the poetry out there seems designed to not be comprehensible by the average person, and maybe people write that way because they really have nothing to say and they're just enjoying themselves, playing with the images, and I really write to communicate, to be understood, to be heard, and to take part in that conversation, rather than to be obscure and just express myself in an abstract way. So I'm glad you appreciate that kind of poetry.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just said brought something up. There's a lot of things I'd love to come back to if we have time, but the space from which we express is tantamount to me. Like it is the difference between life and death, literally, as far as I can tell. And there's at least two spaces that I can think of. We can probably break those off into even more, but there's from the mind, from the head, the ego, and there's from that deeper knowing of experience, that divine connection, as it were. And what you just said, that most people seem to write in a way that it's not understood, like that to me is a perfect example of someone just ego vomiting, basically, literally just vomiting of the ego. And it's meaningless. Like there's nothing to it. It's just they want to be heard, because that's what minds seem to want. They want to be heard. They want to be accepted. They want to be included. They want to be, praised.
Yeah.
All these things.
Fun.
So
I think it's fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Enjoying that, but I think that partly comes out of the university setting. People get poets. They become professors. They have a master's degree or a doctorate, and they're up there with the other poets, and they're communicating with each other.
Yeah,
the rest of us are kind of left out. But I'm sorry, I cut you off. Keep going.
You're all right. But yeah, like that one is just vomiting of the ego, and it is a distraction. Take it back to bread and circuses, as one of the famous Roman senators once said. So long as people have their bread and circuses, I care not who they, what they want. Pointing out that it's very easy to manipulate a society if they're distracted.
Good point. Yeah.
And you are, like, from what I feel in your words, you're the opposite of that. Like, you're the one that's actually pointing to your experience and going, hey, this is the realness that is happening to me right now. This is what matters. And it's that, like, that deep emotional divine connection that I feel is what translates when you're speaking, when you're sharing. Like, it's what brings so many people here today to listen. It's what brings all the book sales. It's that you being you, and it's sharing your deepest experience from those most vulnerable places. And I just want to thank you for that.
Well, if I was Stephen King instead of Stephen Wing, I'd have a lot more money in a bigger house, but I'm not sure I'd be having as much fun as I do.
Exactly.
But you reminded me of something. When I was in school, I studied to be a fiction writer. That was my major in college. And because I love reading novels and stories, but I never really got poetry. When I was in college, reading poets and learning to scan the meter and untangle the symbolism and all that. And only when I was on a hitchhiking trip, I wrote a poem about hitchhiking, and I realized what was the missing ingredient for me was that the things I want to write about, things that matter to me, and hopefully they matter to other people too. But that kind of writing that's just playing with words, maybe that's good practice. But when you strike something that really is important to you, that's when the words come out on their own, and because that's where that practice pays off. And I think readers can sense that. And that's why if you listen to the hit parade, the music that comes out, it's always the words are always about emotions, whether it's love or heartbreak. Those are the two main themes, but it's always about something that really matters to the writer of that song, and the singer is interpreting it in a way that makes you feel it. The same way an actor will read the script in a way that convinces you that that's that person's feelings, not just the script writer's feelings, but the actor is putting those emotions out. So that's the kind of poetry that reaches people. It has to come from a genuine feeling. And I don't know, maybe if you're teaching in a university, you don't have that much emotional experience to draw on. I would think you'd have the same amount as everyone else. But I think it comes down to what you were saying. It's an effort to impress the other people at your level, rather than to come from something genuine inside that needs to get out. It's a need that artists have to get it out and share it with other people. They couldn't keep it in if they tried.
Right.
Yeah.
It really invokes the beauty I didn't know I was looking for. It's like it's like I always compare it to like an example of like the Harlem Renaissance of like, take a part of the country, a part of the city that was known or had a reputation of being a slum and having crime and having just ugly streets. And one day somebody just decided to paint a mural, and all of a sudden something that was at first thought to be ugly all of a sudden is this beautiful mural that just invokes that wonder and that experience, that beauty that you didn't know you were looking for. And that's what I see in your poetry. It's like, for the Harlem example, one mural comes, then another mural comes, and before you know it, there's a whole neighborhood of beautiful murals that eventually people move there.
Yeah.
It becomes gentrified, and all of a sudden there's new housing and hipsters move in, and it's like it's amazing that that's the effect art has. It's like it is the experience of beauty that we didn't even know was possible until we experienced it.
And so much poetry and so much music came out of that era in Harlem. Yeah.
It's just so powerful, and like everything you're saying is what your poetry just invokes that, and it's not speaking to ego, it's speaking to experience. So it just has this flow that is so nourishing to my soul, and I know others feel the same way. Just if I feel it, I know others are feeling that way. I want to take a real quick moment to just check in with our audience and we'll ask some more questions. And I also wanted to invite everybody in the audience, if you have any questions you'd like to ask Stephen, please post in the comments. And if we have time, we will get to your questions. And I also want to take this opportunity to invite you to share on this stage. This space is for you to share your gift, your unique genius. There's something you have that none of us have, and you bringing yourself, your beauty, your joy, your experience of what you've experienced and been through, we all contribute from it. We all gain from it. We are all enriched by you. When you bring yourself vulnerably and authentically, we all gain from it, and we all have gifts. And I just encourage you and I invite you to share on this space, because there's something beautiful on the other end when you do. And this is an open invitation. And that's kind of what One Day is about. This is our mission, is bringing you and me and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. That's our mission. And I'm going to come back now to Stephen Wing, the incredible poet. I'm just still inspired by everything you've shared so far, Stephen. So in your travels and your experience, in your experiencing and your growth through your art and through all your life experience, is there a point where is there like a particular point where you recognize your true self, like in the midst of your experience? Was there a point where you saw and recognized the power that you have and that you are invoking in others? When did you realize it, other than your own internal experience, when did you realize it actually had an effect on the reality that others see and experience?
Well, when I first started writing poetry, I didn't show it to anyone. And then I got to the point where I would, if I was writing someone a letter, I would type a poem in the letter or in the envelope. And then little by little, I reached the point where I would actually make Xerox copies and put those in letters and send them out. And then I got the idea of doing a booklet. And when you travel around the country, every place has a Kinko's. Well, now it's FedEx, but so I would make up my booklet, and then whenever I ran out, I would run off copies at the next Kinko's I found, and I could give them away as I was hitchhiking to the people that gave me rides, or I could, at the Rainbow Gathering, I could take them to the barter circle and trade them with people. And then step by step, I progressed until you just couldn't shut me up. I was always bothering people with poetry. Well, that wasn't that bad, but when I'm at the gathering, people will be drumming around the campfire and singing and sharing, and every now and then I would bide my time, and then suddenly I would stand up and say, well, how about a poem? And as long as I didn't abuse the privilege, people are always glad to hear a poem. And I read poetry about past gatherings, and eventually like I said, I did a book of hitchhiking poems. And then I did a book of rainbow poems. And the thing about the gatherings, it's a non-commercial event, the Rainbow Gathering. So I couldn't do a book and sell it, which meant that I couldn't really do a book unless I could afford to just pay for the publishing and give it away, which was financially not feasible until they invented this thing called crowdfunding. So when the gathering came to Georgia in 2018, I had all these poems from the gatherings. They were on my website, but I'd always wanted to put them in a book. So I did, and I crowdfunded enough to print, I think I printed 500 copies. And I went to the gathering, I gave them all away. I sat by the trail on my blanket and I just gave them out. And there were some people I knew, but I'm an old timer at the gatherings. Most of the people had never seen me before. I'd never seen them. But all these young people, I wanted them to have this because it's a piece of the history of the gatherings. So, and then I retired at the beginning of this year. And the first project I did was to gather my poems into a manuscript. I actually have one manuscript of political poetry from all the different causes I've been involved in, and one manuscript of environmental poetry from my earth poetry. I don't know if I mentioned earth poetry, but that's the name I gave to poetry that that embodies the human relationship with nature. The human world never really was separate from nature, but over the millennia, it has grown to be seen that way by humans, and that's why we're in trouble. So I realized that writing poetry about nature is one thing. It's like looking at a nature on a TV show, but writing poetry about my relationship with nature could introduce people to the possibility of having a relationship with nature, a conscious relationship, because of course all of us are breathing air, we're drinking water, we're part of the natural world without thinking about it. But to make that relationship conscious and make people aware that there's a responsibility in every relationship to maintain a balance and to take care of each other, look out for each other. So that became the thrust of most of my poetry in the last 2 years. And that last poem I read is a sample of that, but I have enough to put together a really sizable manuscript of those poems, which take all different shapes and forms and speak in all kinds of voices. And I have one or two more I'd like to do if there's time. But I started holding a workshop once each season. Here in Atlanta, we have many parks, green spaces, community gardens, nature preserves all over the city. This group, really someone else talked me into it, but we held them at the Oakhurst Community Garden for a number of years, and then we started to branch out and visiting all these different green spaces around Atlanta and exploring them and writing poetry about them. So it's been about 10 years I've been having this workshop 4 times a year, and a lot of my own poetry has come out of that, and we sort of have formed a little core group that's always people that always try to come. So then I have a third manuscript of general, sort of a sampling of the different kinds of poetry I write. So I am, now that I'm retired, I'm able to focus. I'm trying to find a publisher for these manuscripts, because, like I said, my sense of sharing with an audience, a community of listeners and readers, has grown step by step until now you can't shut me up. So I think it's only fair to put it in a book so people can take it or leave it. They don't have to be inflicted with poetry unless they really are into it.
Oh, lucky for us.
So hopefully there's a publisher out there listening, right?
I have a few in mind. Yeah. So I'd love for you to, we do have time for you to share one or two more, but we have a question I wanted to bring up here from Lorraine Fontana. Did your time at New Leaf bring any new spiritual insights to you?
Hi, Lorraine. Yeah, Lorraine and I worked together at a book distributor called New Leaf, which focused on metaphysical literature, holistic literature, holistic health. And there was quite a bit of political consciousness raising that went on with those books too. And one insight I got from that, my job was to write promotional copy about all the wonderful books that we carried. And I read quite a few of those books, and I was kind of, I found it kind of depressing that all these amazing books were coming out with spiritual insights, with political solutions, talking about environmental awareness, and they didn't seem to be having a lot of impact on the world. Things kept going the direction they'd been going in spite of all these writers. So I decided that writing books was not really a useful thing to do, even though I feel like that's what I was born to do. I've written a couple of novels, and I'm working on a nonfiction book. And so I tried to focus more on activism, more on shaping the direction of the world through more direct impact, through activism and through recycling. I was the recycling coordinator at New Leaf, and when I left there, I went to work at my neighborhood co-op, and I got recycling going there. And I really felt like that had an impact on people more than words, but by setting an example. And of course, I was also invited to speak at staff meetings and try to be a cheerleader for recycling. And the measure of my success is that when I left, when I retired at the end of last year, I was able to train a group of people to carry on the recycling there, and it's still going on at New Leaf as well. So, and now I've come full circle. I realized that that I might as well, since the world is still going that same direction, getting more and more polarized and more endangered, that I might as well go back to writing and fulfill my original purpose. I'm not really a metaphysically oriented person, so the books that had an impact on me at New Leaf were books like Ishmael, The Fifth Sacred Thing, which are stories that are full of spiritual insight, and my own writing, the novel I wrote and the sequel, which are both also trying to find a publisher right now, are an attempt to put environmental insight into a story form, and actually a comic story, a comedy. I call it visionary comedy. And so if any of these books ever gets published, I'll find out whether I've wasted my time. But of course, since that's what I'm here to do, it can't really be a waste. It's fulfilling for me, regardless of whatever impact it has.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, if that's what you came here to be and do, like, it doesn't matter what happens with it. Like, you're still fulfilling your purpose. It's not a waste because you're still learning from it, and somehow I feel like others are going to learn from it as well. So,
well, that's a spiritual insight right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and to that same end, the impact may not be external that you can see, but just who you are being in the midst of that process, you've affected people without even knowing it.
Well, you
Yeah.
never do know what your impact is, whether it's words or actions. The ripples go out, and it's not given to us to know more than what's around us. But I guess we have to have some faith.
Exactly, and it's kind of that's the what you're just saying. That's kind of the power that we all have as humans, and a lot of us, including myself, a lot of my life, don't really stand in that, knowing that the power that we all have as individuals, that every word we make, kept or broken, every smile, handshake, or fist we extend, everything every smile, smirk, or frown has an impact, whether we see it or not. It ripples across the universe. It changes the course of the entire universe. And like, that's how powerful we are. And it's like, that's not just an opinion, that's an objective. Like, everything we do affects our reality. And I think that's, you undoubtedly have made an impact. Just in this last 40 minutes, you've made an impact.
Which brings us back around to community, because community amplifies our efforts like that. It's like multiplying our impact if we're in a community that shares those values, and each of those people has their own circle.
Right.
So community is a really important part of it.
Right.
That's the very beginning. Community is where people came from as tribal creatures, and that's what we recreate at Rainbow, and that's what we create in any room full of people listening to poetry. It's a communal experience. I'm sorry, go ahead, Matthew.
You're all right. Like, it's kind of where I was going with it. Like, I feel like I grew up being not necessarily overtly taught, but subtly, subconsciously taught to always ask, why am I doing something? Like, why should I take this action? What's the purpose? And recently I stopped. Like, I found that question to be absolutely pointless. And now the actions I take and the words that I say are not dictated by any fear, any desire, any belief. I hold the intention to let that thing that's bigger than me act and speak through me. And to stop asking the question why. And what I've found is the why comes after. Like, when I get involved in something, I don't have a reason to do it other than my intuition, that higher thing, that thing that's bigger than me said, do it, jump in, go for it.
Comes out of who you are.
Exactly. And then the reasons come after. Like, they always come in hindsight.
Yeah, it reminds me of studying poetry in college, where you learn to dissect a poem. And when I first started writing poetry, I tried to reverse engineer that process and write a poem to be analyzed. And I had to let that go. In fact, a lot of what I learned in school, I had to just let it go and start learning from my daily experience.
I can relate with that with music. It's funny because that's a lot. School based in book knowledge is very, it's very valuable, but in creative thinking and art, it's, if we're just analyzing, that's way different than the act. It's like, that's way different than the action of creating. It's those are completely different parts of the brain, completely different states of being, and so it's I can totally relate with that. We do have a time for one or two more poems if you'd like to share before we close out. Stephen, you got any prepared that you'd like to share?
I have one that I have never shared. I don't think anyone's ever even read it. And there's a shorter one if that fits afterward. This is called Understood. Yes, our grandchildren will curse us. Granted. But they will never understand how absolutely necessary it was to just get in the car and go. How unthinkable it was to just sit still, waiting for the Grand Canyon to come to us, for the empty bottle to run to the store and replenish itself. For so long, to go was simply a synonym for to live. The world was waiting here for all those evolutionary ages, clearly just for us. Why else would it be so irresistibly flammable? Our grandchildren will curse us. Understandable. But they will never have to decide which evil is the lesser, to relinquish all control over steering an accelerator and brakes to ride the subway or the bus, or to imagine an imperceptibly slow, immeasurably vast, inconceivably far-reaching catastrophe in an improbable future which might be foreclosed anyway, any second now, by incoming missiles, if not a simple heart attack or highway accident. And now that they will never have the luxuries they accuse us of refusing to give up, how will they ever know how seductive it was to shovel the future of the world into the furnace and watch it burn? For generations, for millennia, children dutifully revered their elders. But that was in some other world, which we hereby bequeath to all the generations of posterity, preserved in a million movies and TV shows, vintage commercials, landfills and junkyards, but irretrievably gone. Yes, our grandchildren will curse us, understood, but still, just one more trip to the mall, one more Caribbean vacation. All right, now you have to let me read one more after I read that, because that one is too harsh. This is called Stretched Wide Open. One palm and fingers spread flat against the damp, craggy bark of an enormous fallen oak, midway between the towering roots and the crumpled crown of branches. Cold rim of a faded aluminum can found among the leaf litter, clamped between two fingers of my other hand. Standing here stretched, my two arms spanning the poles of the only planet we have. Who says you can't hug the whole blessed world? Just open your arms as wide as they'll go. Then your mind, your heart, your imagination. Hold on and don't let go.
That's very powerful. Thank you for sharing. You know, you have such just a beautiful spirit, and the way you use words is just inspiring, and it's very refreshing for me. You know, I love when words can just float and I can just be, and it's something that I feel I've taken for granted that I didn't appreciate fully until I really, you know, recognize the power of you know, I didn't understand a lot of poetry growing up, but when it invokes my imagination, like your poetry does, it really just, your words are very just, they just invoke something, and I can't actually describe it. It's just this feeling in the spirit, and I just think you are so sincere and authentic with your shares, and your art embodies it so fully, and it just it's so refreshing. So I just honor you and just what you're doing and what you've been, and that purpose that you are very much fulfilling, because it's very moving just having you with us, and I hope you'll come back and share with us again real soon some more poems.
Oh, don't encourage me.
Oh, that's what we do. That's what we do here.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions I didn't get to ask, so I would love to have you back. And actually, there's one I would like to leave for everyone here and just respond in the comments, because I don't feel like there's time to even get into the subject. But it's an existential question that at least two, probably maybe even three, I think there was a bit of it in the Hitchhiking Poem too, that you pointed to. And I would just like to pull that out and leave it for discussion after the episode. And that is, what is it that is so, and there's a couple of words that fit here: terrifying, terrible, unthinkable, about not existing.
About not existing?
About not existing.
In 20 words or less?
Or 20 paragraphs or more, who knows, however it comes out.
Well, nobody knows if we continue to exist after the body dies, but I would say if we're part of the community of nature, then we're not going anywhere. That community will persist as long as it can till the sun explodes. And if we're separate from that, well, yes, when we die, then our fate is up in the air. It's up to question, but we're not separate from that. That's an illusion of the ego. So we are part of this earth. We are part of this universe, and that will continue on, and we'll continue to be part of it, just because it's all one, and all the animals understand that.
Yeah, somehow we seem to be the only ones that don't. And
Well, mystics have glimpses of it, and they try to pass that on to us. But if we take them seriously, then we have to accept that the universe is one, whether we are cognizant of that or not. And so the key is to become part of that.
Right.
And going into the natural world is a key to that for me. But we have to be able to bring it back with us and have that inside of us wherever we are, wherever we go.
Right.
And that leads to one final thing. Like, that was beautiful. I really appreciate that, because it brings up this, which is standing in that truth of we are all connected, and there is something that lives on after this body, which I've experienced. Like, it's not something that rationally I know is true, but experientially, like, there's an experience of that existing. And standing in that truth, what is there to fight for? What is there to defend?
No need to answer that. That's the question that doesn't need an answer.
Absolutely, Stephen. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank
But
you.
we'll answer it next time.
Yeah, next time. Answer it with a poem or a question, I was going to say. I really just so excited and honored to have you, Stephen. I can't wait for you to come back and share some more. This has been an awesome conversation, and I thank you. I just thank you so much. I'm grateful for you. So appreciate you, brother, and we'll be in touch and look forward to continuing this conversation.
Yes. And sooner or later, we'll be continuing it around a campfire in the woods under the stars, and I look forward to that too.
Perfect. We'll have a special episode about that. We'll have our own rainbow gathering. I just want to thank you again, Stephen. It's been an amazing conversation and just beautiful poems and words. It's inspiring. And thank you all for tuning in with us. This has been an awesome episode. Really excited to have Stephen here with us. This is a space for you to share your gift. We want to, again, invite you to share your unique genius, your unique gift, your unique contribution. That's what this space is for. It's for you to share yourself. And when you share yourself, we receive you and other people connect with you, and we build community, and we have collaboration in a world where we build each other up based on our unique strengths, our unique gifts. And that's part of our one-day vision. Our vision is humanity rising in a connected world with each person's unique contributions being valued and magnified through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. That's why we're here, and this is the vision we're standing in. And I'm so grateful and appreciative for you to join us today. We'll be back on Thursday with some more guests. I love you all. Be safe, be well. And until next time, one day is today.